Hey guys, just got done interviewing Quazi Johir, and I think you guys are going to love it. He goes into all kinds of details, his coaching strategy with identity shifting. We talk about his book, Life Mastery, and he gives a really interesting story about how he got into reality creation and law of attraction. I think you guys are going to love it, so check it out. I can hear you perfect.
Fantastic.
So, welcome to the Reality Revolution. Today we have Quazi Johir with us. Hopefully, you've gotten a chance to look at his YouTube channel. I have another episode where I've gone over his book, Life Mastery, and I am so excited to get a chance to talk to Quazi. I consider him he's my soul brother from another mother. Every single time I have some deep thoughts about what I want, researching this stuff, Quazi comes out with a video about it. And if you get a chance, the knowledge he's bringing is super deep. He's talking about reality creation and all kinds of interesting subjects. If you go on there, that he has case examples of things that he has done to manifest, and it's really incredible. And we'll get into that. But welcome, Quasi. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Wow, such kind words. I don't know if I can live up to those.
Well, hey, right now it's hard to find really good coaches. If you are looking for a law of attraction coach, Quasi's the one to do it. If you he has a school, he has a classes that he offers, but the thing that's really profound, something that I've learned in coaching is the identity shifting program. It's really the most effective, and Quasi's been doing it for a while. Is that correct? That's one of your.
Yeah. So I've actually I've started that a while ago, but only formalized it recently.
Right.
So around 4 months ago, 4 months ago, it's been formalized and turned into a program because I found that a system. So I found out I always loved systems in my life, and I always saw
Mhm.
that you could go through feast or famine situations in your life, and once you're just completely thriving, and the other moment you have a famine situation, you don't thrive at all. And this is all because there's a lack of systems in place.
Right.
And whenever I found that you could just take the law of attraction, put them into principles and not just one or two techniques that you try out. And when I first started with the law of attraction, there's so many techniques out there.
Right.
There's
Right.
like guided visualizations, guided meditations, and affirmations, 55 times 5, 2 cup manifestation method. I've tried out everything in the book.
Right.
Like you would not imagine. I've tried out every single thing. And, I got results from them. It's not like I didn't get results at all. It was just never transformational results that I wanted in my life.
Right.
Never really things that were important to me. It's like a parking space here and there, maybe some checks in the mail, money wise, and
Right.
maybe attention from a girl I'm trying to get attention from. But it was never the transformational results that I wanted. Whenever I found out about identity shifting, reading works of David R. Hawkins and the becoming paradigm and
Right.
being, I saw that after I got the result, I became a certain person
Hmm.
and I started embodying certain qualities. And then I started to relate this back to the mirror principle in reality transurfing. If viewers have read that book, it's absolutely amazing, absolutely life changing. And from the mirror principle, I started to see that because you become someone once you get something, why not become that first? And as a
Right.
result of becoming that first, you automatically activate the mirror principle. And we know that in this mirror, there's an image and a reflection, but the mirror of reality, it doesn't distinguish
Right.
between image and reflection. Right now we think that the reflection is whatever the material things that you want to attract in your life. And the image is how you feel after you've gotten those things, how
Right.
grateful you feel, who you are after you've gotten all of these things. But if we start to, since this mirror of reality doesn't distinguish and doesn't discriminate between image and reflection, we can actually form the image first. And if we hold this image for long enough, it has no choice but to reflect it by giving
Yeah.
us the thing
Right.
that.
It's very profound, and it's much more effective than a lot of the other techniques. And you've developed it. So, the first time I really started playing around with this in the reality creation space was the parallel universes of self. When Frederick
Yeah.
Dotson, and I know you've mentioned that book, It's interesting when Quasi mentions his top three books, they're my top three books. It's almost it's pretty crazy. So in that book, he's talking about radical identity transformations where you try to even forget your past and you become somebody else entirely, and it pulls you into that reality where there's already a reality where you are that thing, and it just pulls you towards that energy, and it's the same as the mirror principle. And so that's awesome. So a lot of people see your channel, you have hundreds of videos, but I get a chance to ask you questions this time. So we want to know more about Quasi. All right, so tell me, what's your favorite fiction book, if you were to recommend? Hey, what's a great fictional book?
So easy. The Alchemist.
The
Hands down.
Alchemist, yes.
I
Very
read
good.
that book and I can remember 3 points in the book where I just started tearing up for no reason.
It's
Like
a
it was just
profound,
so
that's
touching.
such an awesome choice that you chose that. The
So
Alchemist.
touching.
Yeah. And your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. That's
That's a
interesting.
harder choice. When I was asked that recently, I had the same exact response because there's so
There's
many.
so many movies out there.
Okay, how
And
about
it's just
this?
like,
If recommend a movie that I probably haven't seen, that, oh, I know you haven't seen this, but you've got to see this movie, that kind of thing. Like if we were talking about movies.
hmm.
I'm a movie junkie, so it might be hard, but we'll see.
For some reason, I've always loved like the Harry Potter series.
Right, right. Yeah,
Like
me too.
I've just rewatched them over and over and over. But I can't think off the top of my head of a movie that I would recommend to you that people haven't watched. But if I do, I'll definitely get back in touch with
All right, all right. That's cool.
you.
That's cool. And so I really want to get an idea of, there's a point at some point where you said, this is what I want to do with my life. I don't want to go out and be a chemist or an engineer. I'm fascinated by the fact that my thoughts create reality. And more importantly than that, I want to help other people do it. And this information is fascinating. I can see that there was a point where you were like, this is more than just playing around. This is really profound, and I want to spend my life doing this. Tell me about that awakening that you had.
Yeah, so this awakening came around 2 years ago before even finding out about transurfing. But transurfing just
Right.
completely accelerated that process. I was like, holy crap, what is this?
Right.
This is a completely different approach to reality creation. So what happened to me was I always loved video games my whole life. I
Right.
loved playing video games, and I was just so fascinated that you could take a character and you could level that character up and then get different things and just progress every single day, just become a little better every single day. Believe it or not, I spent around 12 hours a day in summer, like after school.
Right.
When school would end for summer vacations, I would spend 12 hours a day playing like Destiny, this game called Destiny, where you could just
Oh yeah.
level up your character, and I just absolutely loved it. It
Right.
was fantastic. And at one point, I just got sick of it, and I saw that I was escaping like reality with those video games because I got more satisfaction out of growing that character. So what occurred to me one day was, why don't I grow this character and turn this into a video game? This is interesting. So I started to branch out into different aspects of life. And it all began, like my journey began with working out, going to the gym. And this is because, when I was a child, I was always bullied. I was picked on when I
Hmm.
lived in England, getting a little personal here. I was always picked on.
Right.
And I always thought because I was different. I just moved from Africa to London. So my story is when I was around 4 years of age. I was born in Bangladesh, first of all. When I
Uh-huh.
was around 4 years of age, I moved to Kosovo. Back then, it was known as Yugoslavia, the
Oh
Baltic
wow.
states.
And so that during that time, there's conflict
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Kosovo.
and yeah, that's why I was there because my parents were working for the UN for the peacekeeping mission,
Oh wow.
and I lived there for a year. I do remember a lot of it,
Hmm.
but
What a time to be at that age in that country at that
yeah, it
time in
was
history. Wow.
absolutely amazing. It was. I still remember the summers there. It was just like me chasing butterflies. Really, it was like a paradise. For some
Yeah.
reason, the nature was so untouched,
Right.
and
And so then you moved to
after that,
London.
no, I moved back to
Yeah.
Bangladesh.
Okay.
And then from Bangladesh, I went back. I went to Africa when I was 12. After finishing the sixth grade in Bangladesh, I went to Africa in Cote d'Ivoire.
Hmm.
So it's west of Africa, a little French colony previously called
Right.
Cote d'Ivoire. Lived there for a year, and then I moved to London. And in London, I spent around 4 years. And then from London, moved to New York. Now I live in New York, went to school in Boston, and now I'm back in New York. So during my time in London, because I was from Africa, I always thought people picked on me because I was different. And everyone in London, the school that I went to was a public school. Everyone was from there or born there. There was never any foreigners. I was just completely an outcast.
Right.
So my mannerisms were completely different. I was accustomed to a different culture. So I just behaved more outwardly, more open. I wasn't conservative. I was more just like explosive everywhere.
Right.
And people, I guess, didn't respond well to that. And so I was sort of cast out of that society. I was picked on. People, picked on me. And I always thought that it was like because my teeth were crooked, they would make fun of my crooked teeth. I had like 2 front crooked teeth. But then once
another similarity between you and I, same to me. Right.
And then you also got braces?
I did. Well, I had my 2 front teeth moved down sideways instead of front, so I had a long time, and I had to get jaw surgery and pull the. But yeah, but I know I had that same feeling. My front 2 teeth were like I couldn't smile. You know what I mean?
So what I'm interested to know is how your life changed after you got that shifted.
Gigantic change.
Gigantic change, right?
Gigantic change, and when I realized it wasn't even the surgery, it was the identity of myself thinking,
exactly.
Because the whole time before I'm thinking I can't smile and I really don't want people to see me because I had an underbite. So they pulled bone from the back of my jaw and broke my jaw and wired it shut. And afterwards, it wasn't my smile. I could have smiled the same with my bad teeth. It was inside. Absolutely.
It's how you started identifying with these physical attributes that you have.
Right.
So for me, it was like, okay, well, because I don't have the teeth that I want, I can't smile freely and I can't be open and I can't be that person I want to be. And I always saw myself becoming different after I got braces. I was like, okay, once my teeth are fixed, I'm going to be popular. I'm going to be super popular. I'm going to change. People aren't going to bully me anymore, et cetera, et cetera. That's exactly what happened after I got my teeth fixed.
Because you were believing that beforehand.
Exactly. So that was the shift that needed to take place. So I didn't realize this until I was studying the law of attraction years later. And I was like, okay, this is what's happening. So an interesting book that I read was Psycho-Cybernetics by Mandela.
That was the one I was about to mention because he was a plastic surgeon, right? So he could see these same transformations.
Exactly. So he saw that after he changed his clients' faces, they went to achieve like great feats. It was almost nuts. Like people who weren't making any money got a face change. Boom, they started becoming like CEOs and leading high performance companies.
And that's what you're doing essentially is you're with the identity shifting is you're without the plastic surgery, you're changing somebody's deep identity and doing those same transformations without all the pain.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And apart from that, it's also like implementing like transurfing models, tough D models and stuff that's actually helped me throughout my life. So it's all about having the tools that you need to sort of control, track your attention. That I saw was super important for me.
Right.
And just coordinating your way and just important yogic lessons even that I've learned from my mentors. So implementing all of those and understanding how that fits into identity and how to really craft that ideal character, that version of yourself that achieves that thing that you want.
I mean, you can see that the people that have the greatest ability for reality creation are really good actors and actresses. And you start looking at some of their lives, they don't even know it, but they have these crazy lives. They're manifesting and doing all these things. And it's because they have this ability to deep down let go and become a different identity. And there's some power behind that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Life Mastery, the book. And this is a really good book if you wanted to give to somebody to get give an explanation of some of these reality creation principles. And one thing I mentioned on my previous episode was I started implementing some of your morning routines. You have some interesting morning routine that you added in, and it's very quick. Anybody can add it in, even with their current morning routine. The squeezing the earlobes for the pressure points, tapping on the collarbone, the energy scan, monitoring the energy levels. I don't want to give all the details so people can go out and read the book. But you obviously had developed this through practice, and it clearly had over time. You could tell that there's an order to it, and so it's morning routines. You want to get it done quickly, partially, but at the same time you want that deep connection, and you want the energy too. And it's really excellent, and I want to recommend it to everybody. And that took you a while to develop that, or?
Actually, I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't my personal stuff. It's one of my mentors have taught me.
Oh,
So
okay.
I had an energy coach who taught me this, and
Right.
I saw that I was getting so much results from it. So I thought I would just share this with
No, no,
people.
that and it's perfect. It's really good. Um, Another really interesting thing that I talk a lot on the Reality Revolution about, and then you really address in the book is the first of all, there's this difference between high vibration energy and low vibration energy.
Mhm,
And I look at the world in general, and I see that there's this clash right now between these two energies.
mhm,
We're becoming higher vibration. People are starting to create their reality better and faster and becoming more aware. Maybe
mhm,
it's from video games. Maybe it's from interactions. But it's the technology's made us so that what would happen 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it might take us a year to manifest. And now we're seeing things manifest in weeks.
mhm,
But at the same time, there's that low vibration energy that's also being manifested faster and faster, right? So
mhm.
you're seeing these fears on the global scale, wars and crazy things happening. And you
Mhm.
notice this too,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in general, there's like different classifications. So how you can
right?
identify high vibration and how you can identify low vibration.
Right.
And
The Hawkins
the only
Scale is
reason,
something that you talk about with that,
exactly,
right?
the only reason I started to see this clearly was because of the Hawkins scale and
Right.
200 being the neutral point. And so basically, the scale is divided up into different energy levels from 0 to 1000.
To
And
1,000.
moving from 0 to 1 is a tenfold increase in energy level.
Right.
Most people unconsciously don't even move up that much, don't
Right.
even move up like more than 5 to 10 points, as he says. So 200 is the neutral point, and on the emotional feeling scale, you feel the level of courage. I think
Right.
so. Courage is a level of neutrality, and then love is a level of 500. Unconditional love is 550, and anything that's more rushed and feeling contracted is a lower vibration energy level. It's more protective and more base survival instincts. And now, I personally don't prefer categorizing them in, oh, this is bad and this is good,
Right.
this is
Right.
bad, this
Because
is
they're
good. But
still there. Yeah.
at the same time, this is something that's prevalent. It's just
Right.
identifying what you are surrounding yourself with, then that's going to grow depending on
Yeah.
your environment.
Dotson has the book Levels of Energy as well, and he discusses Hawkins, and his scale
Mhm.
is very similar. And once you start to really evaluate that, it's hard not to, but you start, oh, he's a 300 or she's a 150. You start to kind of,
Uh-huh.
there's a little bit of my mind, and I need to stop doing that, categorizing people by their level of energy sometimes.
Right.
But you can clearly see if I'm talking to a room of people that are at that 50 or low level,
Mhm.
I'm gonna talk to them differently
Mhm.
because they're not going to our energy is not going to correspond. So it is a helpful thing to in the way you interact with people as well, and also in understanding yourself. It's
Mhm.
powerful stuff. And so what I wanted to know is what your morning routine. So you get up and you've had some videos on this. You get up super early, so yeah, I'm super impressed by that. You 4 o'clock is your basic wake up time, 4:30.
No, no. Now it's completely. It's like 5 to 5:30. I'll be waking
Right.
up.
Once I get up a little bit later, but when I do go through the 4 o'clock, it's just so much better. And
Mhm.
if you can pull it off, you can. I end up working later, and so it's
Mhm.
gotta find the balance between that. But then you meditate in the morning, or you meditate later in the day. You meditate.
So what I've recently, so morning routines are changing, and I can like tell you, I've had so many different morning
Right,
routines ever since I started. From the point I wrote the book, Life Mastery, to doing those that morning routine, to like upgrading, finding one that works better, finding iterations that work even better, because you're always going to
right.
find something that works better than the day before. So I wake up around at from 5 to 5:30, and I haven't used an alarm clock in a year.
Oh wow.
So I don't use an alarm. My body just naturally wakes up at that time because I've been training my circadian rhythms to
Right,
just go through that process of going to bed by 11 at the latest. Ideally,
right,
I go to bed around 10 to 10:30, and I get around 7 hours max, 7.5. Wake up at 5:30, and then I take a I take a cold shower,
right away.
and then I just sit down for yoga. I do my
Okay.
morning yoga, which is like a sort of meditation. I learned that from Sadhguru. I
Uh-huh.
don't know if you're familiar with him.
Oh, big
He has
fan.
this process called, yeah, in his inner engineering program. If you
Mm-hmm.
take the one that's live, he teaches you a process called Shambhavi Mahamudra.
Hmm.
And this was completely life changing for me because prior to that, I tried out one of his other programs, which was Surya Kriya, and that didn't
Hmm.
quite work out for me. But you get Sadhguru's live presence in this Shambhavi program. So
Okay.
when he sort of like initiated us into the practice, because any sort of yoga practice, you need to get initiated by a guru.
Right.
And during the initiation process, once we were doing this, it was crazy. People just started screaming, like
Oh, really?
almost unconscious. Like he was like, "Oh, by the way, people, around you, just don't pay attention to what anyone else is doing. Just focus on your own sadhana." He calls it sadhana. It means your own spiritual practice.
You can
Yeah.
do now. I know you went to see him live. This happened live. Or can you do the video? You got to
Uh,
see him live to do it to
yeah.
get activated. Okay.
Yeah. So he
Okay.
doesn't teach the actual practice over the videos, but in live.
Right. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it
That's
was
amazing.
absolutely crazy.
Wow. So is it similar to any yoga routines that I've seen? I mean, I get up, I do 5 Tibetans, I do some basic yoga moves, some
Mm-hmm.
qigong to
Uh-huh.
awaken my energy. And some of these things are similar, but I'm fascinated by what would cause that kind of release with people.
Yeah. So essentially, Sadhguru focuses on what's known as Kriya, and
Right.
pathway to enlightenment is, I assume, I think it's around four. There are 4 or 5 things. So there is what is known as bhakti,
Mm.
devotion. There
Right.
is what is known as karma, which is action. Karma means doing something. So you
Right.
can take the path of doing to go to enlightenment. There is the path of jnana, which is intellect and wisdom, whatever it is that you learn.
Right.
And also there is the path of kriya, which is internal action. So karma is outward action, kriya is internal action. And
Right.
once you do kriya, it's like more breathing exercises, more postures. Because like the only reason yoga works is because you'll see that if you stand up straight, your body and your physiology behaves in a certain way. If you're talking to someone while your spine is erect and your chest is all like out, you become automatically more confident,
Right.
right? If you put your hands on your lap, palms down, you'll breathe a different way. If you put your hands on your lap, palms up, you'll breathe another way.
Right.
So posture becomes crucial. Like I saw that when I was in lecture halls, if I was crossing my arms, I wouldn't
Right.
retain knowledge.
You're holding knowledge away
Exactly.
from you. Yeah.
Because
Okay.
what do you do when you go like that? You're kind of keeping the cold out.
Blocking
Usually when
yourself
you're
off. Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
So an important distinction what I saw was that people when they walk around, they're always like, you'll see their faces, they're always scrunched up and they're
Hmm.
flexing their abs and they're just like tight and clenched every single day. So
Right.
people didn't even like, I didn't even know how to breathe properly. And as a result, people get a lot of stress and anxiety because you're shallow breathing. Most people, if you actually look at how a baby breathes, so I actually have a 2-year-old cousin downstairs visiting from Africa.
Right.
And when she sleeps, she breathes with her stomach naturally.
The
So
ocean breath, the full big
yeah,
breath. Right.
exactly. We were born naturally to breathe through our stomachs and not our chests. When you
Right.
breathe through your chest, you can't get as much expansion in your diaphragm, and therefore your breath is shallow. Once you breathe to your stomach and almost inflate your stomach and not move your chest at all, then it becomes a much deeper breath and it becomes relaxing.
Right.
So a lot of stress and anxiety can just be eliminated if you know how to breathe properly and sit up and stand straight properly.
One of my dreams has always been to be able to get into the proper lotus position. That's just I've meditated forever and I do meditate. I do think it's better to sit down and keep my spine straight when I meditate. But
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's still not the best position. If I could
Mm-hmm.
get on the floor in that lotus, and it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it
It's a
really is.
hard position, and it can be distracting. And when I see people and they just flop right into it, it's like, oh man, if I could just do that once. I know for sure that my meditations and my posture, because that kind of forces your posture
Yeah,
into you can't go out of it when you're in that lotus position. Yeah.
it's difficult to like bend your back.
Right, right,
Yeah, I get that.
right. So it's really interesting because we all talk about in Sunny's channel and we all talk about reality transurfing, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
fascinated by this because I remember when I read it when it first came out several years ago, and to me at the beginning it was just another one of those there's so many law of attraction books. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. I think that what we all responded to was the depth of it, it's a longer book, and he goes into greater detail. It's not the surface generic stuff, and a lot
Hmm.
of it kind of answered. It was, we already knew this stuff to be true, but it was kind of verifying that.
Yeah.
So you read this a couple of years ago, and you
Yeah.
started applying these principles, and it's totally fascinating. But then I read about how other people are applying, and it's like that's not the transurfing and it's becoming this bizarre thing. It's a pendulum, I guess, is what
Hmm.
it's. And he even jokes about that in the book. That it. And what do you think about that? It's become a pendulum in itself a little bit.
The transurfing pendulum.
Yeah,
Yeah. So at the end of the day, a pendulum isn't a bad thing.
it's not a bad thing, right?
It's not. There are constructive pendulums and there are destructive pendulums.
Right.
So the question at the end of the day, and what I tell my clients is, what pendulum are you giving your energy away to? Is it
Right.
benefiting you? Is it taking you towards your goals, or is it taking you away from your goals?
Right.
The biggest pendulum nowadays is the pendulum of societal conditioning. Like
Right.
people are told that you must do this, you mustn't do that. You should do this, you shouldn't do that. Do as I do. The do as I do rule of
Right.
transurfing. And 99% of the time, this is good. But again, the way I see it, this is a band aid solution. Like, why should you tell me that it is illegal for me to kill my neighbor? I should not want to kill my neighbor because I love my neighbor, right?
Right.
So, what we're doing is we're putting out band aid solutions. Like, the more healing from the source solution. So, there's
Right.
again power, there is force. Force is a band aid solution that just covers it up for now.
That's
But
Hawkins'
the
book as well,
more,
Power versus Force. A
exactly.
great book. Yes.
Exactly. So the power solution is empowering people, teaching people like how to love,
Right.
and just removing all these blocks and all this conditioning that we've received throughout
Right.
time. Because, inherently we're all good and love is our source. But then we just get all of this like blocking stuff that doesn't benefit us, this limiting
Right.
stuff. And then we start to buy into it because the mind is really innocent, if you will.
Right. So when we talk about metaphysical and spiritual stuff, I always like to ask have you seen something that was so crazy that it was so unusual, so weird that it's not your normal everyday, that it's a miracle that you saw something crazy that you've always remembered something. Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah. Something like really mystical, like a
Something
mystical.
mystical, an object disappearing in front of you, a weird synchronicity. I always like to ask that because I've gotten some crazy answers, and there's a lot more than people think.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So I don't quite remember. Maybe I have. I definitely know that I have. But the craziest thing that I can think of off the top of my head is me just, one day walking. Like I've had this period of my life towards the end of the senior year, so which was like a few months ago, when I
Right.
would just walk out on the street and then tears would just start streaming down my face. I would look at trees, tears. I'd look at like
Right.
anything, tears. I couldn't explain it. I thought I was going completely crazy.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy because I've had that recently too, and everything is just so beautiful that when you're walking around, it's like it's overwhelming you, and
Exactly.
there's something to that. So yeah, um, so we talk about in reality transurfing. It's not really outright, but the idea of parallel realities, and it's something that
Mhm.
I dedicate my podcast to because I've had some. Do you believe that, for instance, what do you think about the Mandela effect? Do you think that that's I was on an interview about this yesterday. What do you think about the Mandela effect?
It's very real. Like it's
Like,
so real.
right,
Yeah. No, it's crazy because I experienced this the other day with my girlfriend when we were thinking about like this one word and we just couldn't like we both knew that this word exists, but then when we Google it, this word doesn't exist at all. It was crazy. I can't remember what it is, but it was just a crazy experience. And I
right,
told her about the Mandela effect. Oh, this sounds like the Mandela effect. And she was like,
right.
yeah. And she knows it as well. And she's not into transurfing at all.
I mean, of
So
course, some of the time it's just that human beings don't have great memories, and when some of that stuff can be attributed to just the fact that our memories are not perfect, and we remember things differently, and things in general force us to remember it. But you're right. And so we see that all the time. It's fascinating and interesting.
A collective memory gets erased. That's nuts.
Collective memory gets erased is for part of us, but not all of us. Clearly is something, there's something more going on. It's very fascinating and interesting. So I noticed also that you the other day on Facebook, you were reading Awaken the Giant Within. So you like Tony Robbins, and I'm fascinated. So have you ever studied any neurolinguistic programming or anything like that?
So the extent to which I studied I never really got neurolinguistic programming. It was more like Richard Bandler's works.
Right.
So I still don't know the gist of NLP, but I know that there are a set of techniques that you call NLP. There's, moving away from pain, people's motives are to move away from pain and move towards pleasure. Understanding that opens up a lot of new possibilities. Like, it really explains every single behavior that you have, and how, like, human beings have this amazing ability to go through pain, but attribute pleasure to it. I can go to the gym and hurt my muscles every single day. I can destroy my muscles and feel pain, but I can attribute pleasure to this experience because I know that in the long term, I'm going to get some sort of a benefit.
Right. The Richard Bandler story is very interesting because I did my master's thesis on Richard Bandler. Oh. And so when you start researching Richard Bandler, it's a very it turns out that I think in the 80s he was accused of murder, and this woman had scrawled "Don't kill everybody" or something, and that they found that there's a bunch of evidence that, and so he's at the time working with the CIA, and he's got these very powerful hypnotic techniques. One of the things that they came up with is this ability to induce trance without people knowing it when they talk to them. You see a lot of pickup artists using a lot of these techniques. So he goes to trial and testifies in the trial, and the jury is crying, saying, "We should have found him guilty, but we had no choice," and they find him innocent. I'm totally fascinated by this, that one person can do that. So no, I just think that there's a synthesis between NLP and meditation. The more I'm reading, I'm just wondering, as you had read that Waking the Giant Within. So is there any other books that you recommend that maybe the people that are listening haven't heard of, that have kind of defined some of your teachings and your coaching?
Yeah, so I've read a lot of books, but mostly on my Audible because of school, finishing up school.
3 times speed, baby.
Yeah. Wait, you can go to 3 times?
You can now go to 3.5 times speed, and you can train yourself up to it. I've been able to bust out a couple books a day when you're really into it, and I'm almost Audible dependent now. Even though I like to read a good book, Audible, I can blaze through it when I listen to it.
Exactly. But a book that I've been reading, like recently, I've been reading a lot of business books because I want to take this coaching program. I want to really scale it up. I want to help a lot more people, and so I've been reading a lot of business books. And one book that was more mindset rather than business, it's called Relentless by Tim Grover. If you read this book, it's going to get you like charged up. So in yoga, there is this concept of abhyasa and vairagya. Abhyasa means you put complete discipline into whatever it is that you're doing. You go 100% effort. Vairagya means complete surrender and detachment from the effort. So Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, he says how in order to achieve success with any sort of yoga or any sort of technique that you're doing, you have to get completely fully disciplined and involved in it, almost like a monk, but also at the same time completely detach and surrender from it, and find that balance with it. That's the essence of transurfing, finding your own.
It is, yeah. It's
taking
that
care
dichotomy. Really focus deeply on what you want, but don't place importance on it.
Exactly.
Right.
So Tim S. Grover's book, he basically talks about
I will check it out. Sounds great.
It's called Relentless. It's a great book. It will literally make you like take action, like take massive action. Right this moment. But essentially he reflects on, he's a coach. He used to be a coach for basketball players. He coached Kobe, he coached Michael Jordan, and he just talks about his experiences as a coach and how there are 3 categories of people. There's what's known as a cooler, a cleaner, and I forget, it's something else. But ultimately, the cleaner is the person who just says, after he's won a ring, he says back to work. Just never stops working, always for the next
relentless
thing. Yeah.
So you and I come from a different place, and I'm 46. You started this way younger, and what would you say? You just finished college, right?
Hmm.
You in engineering, I think is what I read.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And but a lot of some of the videos that you talk about using the law of attraction and reality transurfing to manifest like 4.0 grade point average.
Uh-huh.
And so what would you say, like I have one of my son's sophomore in high school. What would you
Hmm.
say to him or to those people that are still on that path about to go through what you went through? What would you recommend? Now that you have some of these understandings so that you could save them time and effort and
Hmm.
what would you say to them?
Absolutely. So essentially what I saw was that identity shifting was the key for me. When I saw that I could shift into a version of myself who is, okay, what does Quasi who gets the 4.0 GPA do? How
Right.
does he live? Completely shifting and embodying that version of myself was the first thing. And that's again, going back to ancient Hermetic philosophy. I don't know if you're
Oh
familiar with
yes, the
Hermeticism.
Kabbalion and
The Kabbalion, yeah. In the
right,
Kabbalion, this guy, Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice greatest, he talks about there's this understanding of the spiritual plane, the mental plane, and the physical plane.
right,
Whenever you do any sort of law of attraction work, it's mostly happening on the spiritual plane. And we can't really explain the spiritual stuff because we don't have the tools to explain it. And
right,
then when you focus on techniques and when you focus on strategizing, that's the mental plane. Once you take action on the physical plane, then you're focusing on using your hands to create this in this frame. So, in understanding that, if you bridge all three planes, you can achieve success in any field. So, that's what I knew at that moment in time.
right.
So I worked on visualizing my ideal self, being that ideal self. What would Quasi, who is that self, how would he do whatever he's doing, that 4.0 version of himself? Then I focused on strategizing. And I saw that I was studying too much because in engineering, it's just a lot of work. And I saw that
Right.
maybe there's a smarter way of doing this. Maybe I can cut much more time. And then I found out a book called How to Be a 4.0 GPA Student or How to Be a Straight A Student by Cal Newport.
Right.
Great book. Definitely
Okay.
recommend anyone who's going through school to read that. But what I got from that book was technique wise was the most important thing was every single day when you go about carry your notes with you and whenever your teacher assigns you any assignment or anything you have to do, put it down in your notes. I still do this even to this day. Just put it down in your to-do list. Next morning when you wake up, take 5 minutes to jot down stuff from your to-do list to your calendar. Literally takes 5 minutes to do that.
Right.
And obviously now I've systemized this to a much better process where I just do 5 priorities that I focus on every single day.
Right.
But that was a starting point for me. Every single morning after that, without fail, I would always jot down my stuff that I needed to do on my calendar. So on my phone or on my Apple calendar, I would just put it down. And for some reason, when you put it on your calendar, it just gets done.
It just gets done right.
It just gets done. And
Right.
that was a good time management process that I had. And yeah, those were among many of the study techniques that I used, but that was definitely the most profound.
And also, you have several videos, very much like me. I think we learn a lot about the law of attraction and reality creation when we attempt to find love, when we attempt to get into a relationship, because we end up questioning ourselves and
Hmm.
getting going through this process. And you had a similar journey where you identity shifted. So you had the George Clooney or the Hank Moody
Yeah.
identity that you used, and
Uh-huh.
you became somebody else.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, even if you follow your videos, you see a point where you cut your hair. You used to have super
Uh-huh.
long hair, and you could see like that's a different Quasi all of a sudden. Same Quasi, but completely different in the way you're carrying yourself, your facial expression. Seriously, it looks like you went through a little bit of journey that you might be able to help some of the people listening from that.
Yeah. So when I was going through my journey of, finding the ideal partner, that was the long hair Quasi. That was
That
like
was the
me
long
just
hair
pimping
Quasi,
it.
right?
That was just me pimping it all the time. Like, yeah, look
Right,
at me, going to parties all the time, socializing, becoming massively social. And this
right,
was a big pain point for me
right.
because in high school, in like high school when I was bullied, I always wanted to,
Be that guy.
I always had crush. Yeah, I was just a dude, I was just trying to get some attention from girls, and I always wanted that, and I never really got it to the extent that I wanted. So I thought, okay, how can I make myself better in this case? And then I started using the law of attraction, identity shifting to learn all this stuff, and then again on the mental plane, I started strategizing. So I thought, okay, how does one become better at social interactions? I read so many books on it, watched so many YouTube videos on it, learned principles like the mirroring principle. And I
Right.
think a great book on this is, I forget, it's a big red book. I completely forget, but I'll definitely get back to you on that
All right.
one.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
but
another area where
the
there's a
light
ton.
switch,
The light switch. Okay.
yeah,
All
it's a
right.
great book.
It's an area where there's a ton of books out there. But even then, when you read the books, I think watching some of Quasi's videos gives you a different perspective than even those books, because he is not, you're talking more about internally how
Hmm.
you identify yourself, which is a really important first step. When I've coached people, a lot of times I'm coaching people that want to find love, but they hate themselves. And
Mm.
so I think that identity process that you're talking about helps you. It doesn't matter if you love yourself or not. You're just becoming somebody that is, and
Hmm.
it really, it's effective and powerful. That's awesome. So
Hmm.
you have a class that you offer.
Hmm.
It's a training course. It's called Reality Mastery.
Hmm.
Um, and you can go and sign up for not everybody qualifies, but you can enroll in it, and there's a chance. And I've read some great things about it. And so you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so essentially it's this whole system that I've spent years and years like learning the law of attraction, learning what
Right.
really works and what doesn't, and just bringing everything to the truth. It's just what really works. I don't want to give you a course where it just, features like, wow, great, I'm going to teach you this technique and that technique and this technique. But if at the end of the day, if it doesn't get you results, what good is it?
Right.
If it doesn't get you from point A to point B, it's not really any good.
Right.
So that's what I've tried my best to do. And I saw that with any single thing in my life, whether it be getting a 4.0 GPA in school, whether it be getting the girl of my dreams, whether it be, quitting my 9 to 5 and taking my entrepreneurship career full time and making the money that I want to make. This all came as a result of implementing this system.
Right.
So I saw that I could also do this for other people after coaching some clients. So then I started this program, and then more clients started joining, and then more clients started getting results. And as a result of that, this started to develop itself and became
Awesome.
a thing.
So yeah, it sounds like something that could really help people out, and I definitely recommend people check that out. Check out the book Life Mastery. And so I'm just so excited to meet you. We've interacted a little bit on Facebook, and it's awesome to meet you. It's super pleasure. I recommend that everybody check out the channel and the book. And thank you so much for spending the time with me today. And we should definitely talk more soon about some of this stuff. And
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
next time I'm in New York, I might give you a call. So, all right.
Yeah.
All right, Quasi, have a good one. Thank you so
You
much. It
too.
was a
Take
pleasure.
care. You too.